You won't believe what happened last night. I was home alone, just chilling, playing a game upstairs with my headphones on, but low so I could hear if anyone called. Anyway, this weird scratching started outside. At first, I thought it was just a branch or something scraping across the side of the house. But it was a bit different. It was just too odd, and I had a bad feeling about it, and it kept going and going. Like something was really trying to get at the side of the house right under my bedroom window. It was a steady scrape every few seconds or so. Made my skin crawl. I took off my headphones, and the house just felt silent except for this scratching. It was definitely deliberate, not like an animal just wandering around. So I got up real slow and peeked through the curtains. Nothing, just the usual bushes outside, and as soon as I looked, the scratching stopped. I stood there for a bit trying to listen, but it didn't happen again. I almost thought I'd imagined it. Then, there was a knock at the door, downstairs. The front door. My stomach dropped. Who the hell knocks that late? It was well after midnight. Well, we have one of those ring doorbells, so I grabbed my phone and looked at the feed. But the porch was empty. Nothing, just the usual sensor shining on nothing. Maybe it was the wind hitting the door, but it felt like an actual knock. I was still looking when I heard rattling from the back of the house, like someone was trying the handle on the back door. That's when I really started to get a little freaked out. Someone was trying to get in. I snuck through the house and went in the kitchen and grabbed the skillet hanging there. It felt heavy, but that was the point. Then I went to the back door. The little window in the door was dark, no light coming through. I pressed my face to the glass trying to see into the garden, and then I saw him. Tall, just standing there at the edge of the light from the kitchen. His back was to me, but his head was tilted, like he heard me. Then he slowly turned around. Even in the dark, his face looked pale and just weird. I couldn't really see his eyes, but I knew he saw me. He probably seen me at the bedroom window too. We just stood there, looking at each other through the glass for what felt like forever. Then he just vanished, slid back into the shadows. I was breathing hard at this point, and I stumbled back, dropping the skillet. I had to see where he went. My legs felt like jelly, but I went to the kitchen window that looks over the side garden. There's this high wall there, and I saw him climbing over it. He dropped down on the other side and was gone. I was so scared I was shaking. Who was that? What did he want? Called the police. My fingers kept slipping on my phone, but I finally got through. The person on the phone was calm and reassuring, but I was a mess trying to explain. But they said they'd send someone over. I waited for what seemed like hours, terrified. Every little noise in the house made me jump. All I could think was, what if they come back? What did they want? Police finally showed up, 2 of them, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. I showed them everything, the back door, the window, the wall. They looked around with their flashlights but didn't seem too bothered. After a bit, they told me they didn't see any forced entry or footprints. They said it was probably just kids messing around or my imagination. I told them no, I know what I saw him. But they just took my details and told me to call them back if the person came back, and then they left. Once they were gone, the house felt even creepier. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked like him. I finally went to bed but couldn't sleep. Every little rustle outside made my heart pound. I kept seeing that pale face turning towards me. I just pulled the covers up and stared into the darkness. He was still out there, and I have no idea what he wanted. I am a night owl, always have been. I live in a quiet suburb, and I often take walks around 1 a.m. to clear my head. One night last fall, I was strolling down my usual route, just a few blocks from home. when I noticed a man standing under a streetlight about 50 yards ahead. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie, and he wasn't moving, just standing there, hands in his pockets and his head down. I figured he was waiting for someone, so I kept walking, my earbuds in, but the music low. As I got closer, he looked up. His face was pale, almost gaunt, with these hollow eyes that locked onto me. I gave a small nod, trying to be polite, but he didn't react. Instead, he started walking towards me, his pace matching mine. My stomach twisted. I sped up, and so did he. I took out my earbuds, the silence of the street suddenly deafening, and glanced back. He was closer now, maybe 20 yards away, and I swear I could see a glint of something metal in his hand. I turned a corner, my house just a block away, and broke into a jog. I heard his footsteps behind me, steady and deliberate. I didn't dare look back again. I made it to my door, fumbling with my keys, my hands shaking so bad I dropped them twice. When I finally got inside and locked the door, I peeked through the blinds. He was standing across the street, just staring at my house. That metal glint still in his hand. A knife, I was sure of it. He stayed there for an hour before walking off into the dark. I found out later from a local news report that a string of break-ins had happened that week, all late at night, all in my area, and I don't go out walking anymore. I'm an avid hiker, always chasing the solitude of the wilderness. Last spring, I decided to tackle a 3-day trek in the Pacific Northwest, a trail called Raven's Pass, known for its dense forests and steep cliffs. I was a day in, about 10 miles from the nearest road, when I noticed something off. It was late afternoon, the light fading fast, and I kept hearing twigs snap behind me, like someone was following, but always just out of sight. I'd stop, look back, nothing, just trees and mist. I told myself it was a deer, but the rhythm of the steps felt too human. By dusk, I set up camp in a small clearing, my tent barely fitting between the pines. I built a fire hoping the light would ease my nerves, but that feeling of being watched wouldn't go away. Around 9 p.m, I heard it again. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling my camp. I grabbed my flashlight and called out, "Who's there?" "I'm not alone." A lie, but I hoped it'd scare them off. No answer. Then from the edge of the firelight, I saw him, a man, maybe 40, in a ragged flannel shirt, his face smudged with dirt. He was holding a hunting knife, the blade catching the fire's glow. He didn't speak, he just stared at me, his eyes unblinking, like he was sizing me up. I stood, my heart hammering, and shouted, "Get out of here! I'll call for help!" I had no service, but I waved my phone anyway. He tilted his head, then stepped back into the shadows, vanishing. I didn't sleep, sitting by the fire with my hatchet in hand, jumping at every sound. At dawn, I found boot prints around my tent, too big to be mine, and a small pile of animal bones stacked neatly by a tree like a warning or something. I packed up and hiked out, not stopping until I reached my car. Later, I learned from a local that a fugitive had been spotted in those woods, wanted for assault. I still hike, but never there again. I worked the night shift at a diner, so I'm used to walking home late. My route takes me over a small footbridge near the edge of town, usually deserted at 2 a.m, but one night last winter, I was halfway across the bridge when I saw a man standing at the far end, leaning against the railing. He was tall, wearing a long coat, and his face was hidden by the shadows of the street lamp. I didn't think much of it. People sometimes stopped there to smoke, but as I got closer, I noticed he was watching me, his head turning to follow my every step. I nodded, trying to be casual, but he didn't move. He just kept staring. My gut told me something was wrong. I sped up, and that's when I heard him chuckle, a low, raspy sound that sent chills down my spine. "Where you going so fast?" he called out, his voice gravelly. I ignored him, my heart racing, and kept walking. Then I heard his footsteps behind me, heavy and quick. I glanced back. He was following, maybe 20 yards away, his hands in his pockets. I couldn't see his face, but I saw something glint in his hand as he pulled it out. A blade, I was sure of it. I broke into a run, my apartment just a few blocks away. He didn't speed up, but he didn't stop either, his footsteps echoing in the quiet night. I made it home, slamming the door and locking it, my hands trembling as I peeked through the blinds. He was there, standing at the corner of my street, staring up at my window. He stayed there for 10 minutes maybe before walking off. The next day, I found out a woman had been attacked near that bridge a week earlier. Same description, same time of night. Now I take a different route. I've never liked basements. Even as an adult, they still unnerve me. But I moved into this rental house alone after my divorce, and the rent was cheap. I knew there'd be quirks, but the only real issue was the basement light. It never seemed to stay off. It started the first week I'd moved in. I'd turn the light off at night before bed, only to come downstairs in the morning and find it on again. At first, I thought maybe I forgot. Maybe I brushed the switch while walking past. But it kept happening, every single night. I changed the bulb, I switched out the fixture, even called an electrician who said everything looked fine. He replaced the switch just in case, but it didn't help. By the second week, I stopped going down there at all. The laundry could wait. The strange part was how off the light felt. Like it wasn't just on, it was inviting, beckoning. The glow would stretch up the stairs in a way that made my skin crawl, like it was reaching. One night, I turned it off before bed as usual, stared at it for a good minute to make sure, and went upstairs. I was drifting off when I heard it. 3 distinct creaks on the staircase, and my blood turned to ice. I waited, straining my ears. Nothing else, just silence. I told myself the house was settling, the usual noises. But when I woke up, the basement light was on again. That was the first time I locked my bedroom door. 2 nights later, I heard the basement door open. It didn't slam or creak, just a soft click and a slow swing. I stayed frozen in bed, not even daring to breathe. Then I heard it again, those 3 deliberate steps. The next morning, the door was closed, but the light was on, just like always. I started working late, anything to avoid being home when it got dark. I considered breaking the bulb, but a part of me was terrified of what might happen if the light didn't work. Like maybe it wasn't just the light that was strange, but what it was keeping at bay. Then, the night everything changed, I came home around 11. I'd been drinking a little. I was tired, emotionally spent, and fed up with being scared of a light bulb. I marched straight to the door of the basement, opened it, and said, "Okay, fine, I'm here." I flicked the switch. The light stayed off. I waited. 10 seconds. 30. A minute. Nothing. Something about the silence was heavier than usual. I felt like I was underwater. I turned to walk away when I heard something shift in the darkness below. Not a footstep. Something scraping. Then a voice. Low. Whispered, "You saw me last night." I froze. My mouth went dry. I didn't even realize I was crying until a tear dropped on the floor. "You locked the door. Smart." I slammed the basement door shut, locked it, and called the police. They couldn't find anything. No signs of forced entry, no one hiding. They humored me. Searched the basement thoroughly. Just a water heater and some dusty shelves. They didn't understand. Whatever had spoken to me wasn't someone. Not exactly, but it knew things. Knew I locked my door. Knew when I was watching. I haven't been back to the house since. I left that night and never returned. The landlord kept my deposit. I don't care. Some nights, I still dream about the glow seeping from that basement, curling under the door like smoke, and I wonder, what would have happened if I'd have gone down the stairs? I work late shifts at a bar on the edge of town, so I'm used to walking home well after midnight. It's usually quiet, just a 20-minute stroll through residential streets and a shortcut across the park. I've never minded it. I actually like the solitude. But last Tuesday, the walk felt different. Off. The air was unusually still. No wind, no cars, even the distant hum of the city sounded muted, like the world has been holding its breath. I noticed him just before I reached the park. A man, maybe in his mid-30s, walking about a block behind me. I only saw him when I glanced over my shoulder, but he wasn't doing anything weird, just walking. Still, I picked up my pace a little. I told myself I was being paranoid. I crossed into the park, just a straight path flanked by trees, maybe 5 minutes end to end. The lamps along the trail flickered now and then. They always have, nothing new. I checked behind me again, and he was there, closer. I slowed down slightly, listened, and that's when I heard them. His footsteps, heavy, deliberate, just a few beats behind mine, matching my pace too perfectly. I stopped walking, so did he. I turned around fast, heart in my throat. No one was there. Just the empty trail behind me, stretching into the dark. The trees, the flickering lights, the windless night. Empty. I laughed nervously. Maybe I imagined him. Maybe he turned down a side path I didn't notice. I kept walking, a little faster this time. My shoes hit the gravel in quick rhythm. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Then I heard it again. Another set of steps. Not echoing, responding. Crunch, crunch. Matching mine. Deliberate. I didn't stop this time, I just started running. I don't know how long I ran for. My lungs were burning when I finally reached the other side of the park. I darted into a lit street, stopped under a street lamp and turned around. Nothing. No one. I felt stupid, embarrassed even. I texted a friend when I got home, made some tea, told myself it was probably just my imagination mixed with exhaustion. I didn't go to work the next night. I needed rest. The bar was short-staffed, but I didn't care. At 2:17 a.m. I heard footsteps outside my apartment. I live on the 3rd floor of a quiet building. My window faces the back alley. No reason for anyone to be there. But someone was walking through the gravel lot. Slowly, the same rhythm. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I peeked out. There was a man standing just outside the glow of the security light. Still, looking up at my window. I ducked, waited. I called the building manager who said he'd check the cameras the next day. I could barely sleep. In the morning, I got an email. He said the cameras were glitching, nothing recorded between 2:10 and 2:30 a.m. Probably just a transient, he wrote. Don't worry. But I am worried. Last night, the footsteps came again. Same time, same pacing, but this time they didn't stop. I heard the back door of the building creak open. He was inside. I pressed my ear to the apartment door, heard heavy footsteps climbing the stairs. 2nd floor. 3rd. They stopped right outside my unit. I didn't breathe, I didn't move, I didn't even blink. A soft knock, 3 times. Then silence. No retreating footsteps. No door closing, just stillness. I stayed frozen until dawn. When I finally opened the door, the hallway was empty, but a single sheet of paper had been slid under my door. No handwriting, just a printed sentence. I walk where you walk. I stop when you stop. One night, I won't. I'm writing this from a friend's house. I'm not going back. I left everything there, my clothes, my laptop, even my cat. I just ran, but I don't think that's enough. Because tonight, outside her house, I swear I heard gravel crunching. It started on a Tuesday. I was home alone. My roommate was out of town visiting family. I'd just moved into this place a month earlier. A 2-story rental in a quiet neighborhood. Big windows, nice backyard, plenty of space for two. Too much space for one. It was around 11 p.m. and I was brushing my teeth when I saw it. Movement in the window behind me. It wasn't dramatic, just a flicker, like someone had walked by the bathroom window. But we live on the 2nd floor. I turned fast, toothbrush still in hand, and stared out into the darkness. Nothing. Just a faint reflection of the room behind me. I laughed it off. Must have been a trick of the mirror. I locked the bathroom window anyway and went to bed. The next night, it happened again. I was in the kitchen this time, getting water before bed. Our kitchen faces the backyard. As I reached for the fridge, I saw something move past the sliding glass door. Not outside, but inside the house. Like someone had just walked into the hallway behind me. I spun around. There was no one there. The hallway was empty. Again, I told myself it was my imagination. Living alone makes every noise louder, every shadow deeper. Still, I kept the lights on in the hallway that night. Thursday, things escalated. I woke up to find muddy footprints on the carpet. Just 2. One step, then another. They led from the hallway to the center of the living room and stopped. No trail, no return steps. Just there. The front and back doors were locked. No signs of a break-in. Nothing was taken. I cleaned them up and tried not to think too hard about it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I heard the soft creak of the stairs. My bedroom is at the top. I froze under the blanket, listening, counting each step. Creak, pause, creak, then silence. I didn't move until the sun came up. When I finally went downstairs, everything looked normal. Too normal, like the house was holding its breath. When I finally went downstairs, everything looked normal. Too normal. And then Friday was the worst. I was sitting in the living room, trying to distract myself with a movie. That's when I heard tapping. Slow, rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the front window. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I pulled back the curtain. There was a man standing in the yard. He wasn't doing anything, just standing perfectly still, staring at the house. I couldn't make out his face. He was too far into the shadows, but I knew he was looking at me. I grabbed my phone and called the police. When they arrived, the yard was empty. No footprints. No one had seen anything. The officer asked if I'd had any recent breakups, disputes, things like that. I said no. He gave me a non-committal nod, like he didn't believe me, and left. That night, I barely slept. At 2:49 a.m., I woke up to a soft noise. A voice, whispering. I sat up, heart pounding, and strained to hear. It was coming from the closet. I don't even remember getting out of bed. I just remember standing in front of the closet door, hand shaking as I reached for the knob. I pulled it open. Empty. But on the inside of the closet door, written in what looked like charcoal or ash, were 3 words. I see you. I moved out the next morning, packed a bag and left everything else behind. My roommate doesn't believe me. He says I probably had a breakdown, or maybe sleep paralysis. He moved back in a week ago, said the house felt fine. But last night, I got a text from him. It was a picture, the front window, taken from inside the house. A man stood outside, face obscured, hand raised as if mid-knock. The message just said, "Is this the guy you saw?" I didn't respond, because if you zoom in on the window pane, you can see something behind the reflection. A second face, inside the house, watching him. This happened last fall, just after the time change. I was walking home from my friend Leo's place a little later than usual. We had a few drinks, nothing crazy, just enough to feel that autumn buzz, the kind that makes the cold air feel sharper than it should. There's a shortcut through the woods that cuts my walk in half. It's just a dirt trail, not paved or lit, but I've taken it 100 times. It runs between the train tracks and an old stretch of undeveloped land. Never had a problem. Until that night. The first weird thing I noticed was the quiet, complete silence. No rustling leaves, no distant traffic, not even the hum of insects. Nothing. I thought maybe the cold had driven everything off, but it felt like the air itself was holding still. About 10 minutes in, I noticed something else. Footprints. But these weren't mine. These were barefoot and huge. They ran alongside the trail for a while before veering off into the underbrush. I stopped and stared at them for a good minute. It looked like someone had walked barefoot through mud and just kept going. The weirdest part? They were fresh. I should have turned around. I wanted to turn around, but I didn't. I just kept walking. I was maybe 5 minutes from the road when I heard the whistle. A high-low drawn-out note, almost like a bird call, but slower. Precise. I stopped. Another whistle answered from somewhere behind me. My chest tightened. I didn't move. Just stood there, ears straining. Then something moved to my right, branches cracking, quick and heavy. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel it. Something big. I started walking again, fast. More footsteps followed, crunching in the woods, always just out of view. Every time I stopped, they stopped. When I moved, they moved. That's when I noticed something on the trail ahead. Something tied to a tree. I got closer and saw it was a piece of string, hanging at eye level, stretched across the path, tied to a branch on each side. I ducked under it, heart racing. Then I saw the next one, a rope this time, tied between two trees, lower, knee level. Someone had set traps, and not for animals. These traps were set for people. I ran. I don't know how long, I don't remember what direction, just trees and breath and panic. Eventually I hit the road. I collapsed at the edge of the gravel shoulder, gasping like I'd just escaped a nightmare. When I looked back at the woods, I saw someone. They were standing just inside the tree line, too far for me to make out a face, but close enough to see that they weren't wearing shoes. They raised their hand, almost a wave, almost a warning, and vanished behind the trees. I sprinted the rest of the way home. I called the cops the next morning. They found nothing, said it was probably kids messing around, but I knew better. I haven't used that shortcut since. I take the long way now, every time. But some nights, when I pass the entrance to the woods, I swear I can hear it. That same slow whistle, and something waiting. I used to babysit for a family that lived just a few blocks from me. Easy money, well-behaved kid, and the house was clean and quiet. Their daughter, Abby, was 6. She was sweet, a little shy, big into fairies and space stuff. She loved stories before bed. This night felt normal at first. I put her to sleep around 8:30, then settled into the living room to scroll through my phone. The baby monitor was sitting on the coffee table beside me. Just a cheap audio model with no video feed. It crackled softly with static. Around 9:10, I heard her voice through the monitor. "Can you tuck me in again?" I got up and headed to her room, kind of surprised she was still awake, but when I opened the door, she was already tucked in, lying still, eyes wide open. I didn't say anything. She whispered before I could speak. I paused. "You didn't call for me?" She shook her head slowly. I stayed with her for a few minutes, pretending everything was fine. Told her it was probably a sound from the monitor acting up. She seemed calm enough, so I turned off the light again and left the door cracked open. Back in the living room, I turned the monitor volume down a bit and tried to focus on my phone. My skin was crawling, but I didn't want to admit I was spooked. 15 minutes later, the monitor crackled again, this time a whisper. Too faint to make out at first, but steady. I leaned in close. It said, "She's not asleep." I froze. The voice didn't sound like Abby. It was too deep, like someone trying to sound small. I ran back to her room. Abby was sitting up now, eyes wide, clutching her blanket. "He's under the bed," she said, before I could ask. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even shaking. Just sat there, like she was waiting for someone to agree with her. I really didn't want to look. I really didn't want to look. But I did. I knelt down, held my breath, and lifted the comforter. Nothing, just darkness. And then, something moved. Just slightly. I pulled her away from the bed and carried her into the living room. I called her parents, tried to keep my voice calm. I didn't want Abby to panic. They said they'd be home in 15 minutes and to call the police if I felt unsafe. I didn't call the cops. I didn't want to explain that I thought someone might be whispering through the baby monitor. It sounded ridiculous. We stayed on the couch together. Abby was half asleep in my lap when the monitor crackled again. "You saw me!" I yanked the plug out of the wall. I didn't sleep. I sat there clutching Abby until her parents got home. I didn't tell them everything, just that I thought I had heard someone around the house and that we got spooked. They thanked me, paid me, and I left. I never babysat there again. A few weeks later, I passed their house on a walk, and it was empty. A for sale sign stuck in the yard. I texted her mum just to check in. She said they'd decided to move closer to family. I didn't push the situation. But last week, I was cleaning out my old closet and found the old baby monitor in a box of random stuff. I don't know why I had it. Maybe I'd packed it by mistake that night in a rush. I was about to toss it, but curiosity got the better of me. So I plugged it in. Just static. Then, a faint breath. Then a whisper. "Found you!" I pulled the plug and threw it in the trash. But sometimes at night, when everything's quiet, I can still hear it. Crackling. Whispering. Waiting. I used to jog at night. It was the only time I could clear my head. No traffic, no crowds, just the sound of my feet hitting the pavement and the cold air stinging my lungs. There's a loop around the industrial part of town, mostly warehouses and lots with high chain link fences. It's lit just enough to see where you're going, and I liked how empty it always felt, peaceful in a weird kind of way. Until that night. It started small. I was maybe halfway through my run when I saw her. A woman standing by one of the fences. At first, I thought she was a mannequin or maybe some kind of display. She wasn't moving, just standing dead still with her back to me, her long black hair hanging straight down her back. She wore a grey hoodie and pyjama pants, barefoot. I slowed down but didn't stop. Jogged past her, keeping a good distance. I felt her eyes on me even though she didn't turn around. The next night, she was there again. Same place, same posture, but this time she was facing me. She still didn't move. I crossed the street early, trying not to make eye contact. My gut twisted up like it knew something I didn't. I told myself maybe she was homeless or sleepwalking or just strange. But night after night, she kept showing up, always by the same section of fence, never speaking, never moving, just staring. One night, I broke my routine, took a different street, longer route. She was still there, a block over near a different fence, just as still, as if she'd been waiting for me. I didn't run past her this time. I turned around and sprinted home. After that, I stopped jogging, started using the treadmill in my building's gym. Safer, brighter, no women standing still in the dark. Weeks went by. I tried to forget about her, but one night I got up to get water and glanced out my apartment window. She was standing across the street, still, silent, head tilted just slightly, like she was listening. I live on the 4th floor. I didn't go outside. I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor with a knife in my hand until the sun came up. She was gone in the morning. I reported it, filed a police report, bought a camera for my door, even stayed with friends for a while. Everything seemed normal again, until last night. I was walking down the hall to my apartment when I saw something under my door. A shadow. Feet. Someone was standing there. I backed away, heart pounding. Called building security, but when they arrived and opened the door, the hallway was empty. But there was something sitting right outside. A pair of dirty, wet footprints, barefoot, leading away from my door, and a grey hoodie folded neatly, placed right on the welcome mat. I haven't gone home since, and now, every time I close my eyes, I see her standing just on the other side of my lids, waiting, watching. I was house-sitting for my aunt while she vacationed in Florida. Quiet neighborhood, lots of space between the houses, and a view of nothing but fields and forests behind her backyard. She asked me to stay for a week, feed her dog, and keep the plants alive. Easy enough. The house always had a strange stillness to it though. Not creepy exactly, just still. No hum of traffic, no kids playing outside. At night, the silence pressed in like a blanket. The first 2 nights were uneventful. I watched some old movies, took the dog Max a fluffy mutt on evening walks, and slept without issue. But on the 3rd night, I woke up to something knocking. Not banging, just soft, deliberate tapping. Knock, knock, knock. It was coming from the front door. I blinked at the red digits on the bedside clock, 3:12 a.m. My first thought was someone needed help, maybe a neighbour. A car broke down. I threw on a hoodie and padded down the hallway, Max at my heels. But as I reached the door, Max froze. His body went rigid, and he let out the lowest growl I'd ever heard from him. Then he backed away and disappeared into the hallway. Something about that made me hesitate. I looked through the peephole, but there was nothing there. No one on the porch. No movement. No cars in the driveway. I waited, watching, maybe for a minute, maybe more. Eventually, I went back to bed, telling myself it was probably the wind or an animal or something innocuous. But I didn't sleep. 10 minutes later, knock, knock, knock. I jolted upright. This time, the knocking was slower, intentional. I didn't go to the door. I just sat in bed staring at the hallway. My heart was racing, and then I heard it. A voice, soft, female, almost a whisper but clear as a bell in the silence of the house. "Can you let me in?" It was muffled, but I could tell it was coming from the front door. My skin prickled. I wanted to scream, wanted to hide. Instead, I grabbed Max, who was hiding under the bed, and we sat in the corner of the bedroom until the sky lightened with dawn. When I finally opened the front door that morning, there was no one there. No footprints, no damage, just a piece of paper taped to the glass. Let me in next time. The handwriting was strange, delicate, loopy, like a child trying to mimic cursive. I called my aunt. She laughed it off at first, said when she first moved in, some neighborhood kids used to mess with the older residents. Fake hauntings, dumb pranks. But when I told her the knocking happened at exactly 3:12 a.m, her tone changed. Every night, she asked. I nodded, twice now. There was a pause. That's when your uncle died, she said. 3:12 a.m, massive heart attack. I was standing right by the front door when I heard him fall. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know she had a husband. I'd never seen photos, never heard her mention him. She was quiet for a long time, then said, "Just don't open the door, no matter what." I cut the house sitting short, told her I wasn't feeling well, and she didn't argue. Back in my apartment, I tried to forget about it. I chalked it up to stress, weird dreams, or maybe someone was messing with me. Either way, it was over. Until last night. I woke up in the dark, disoriented. My clock read 3:12 a.m, then knock, knock, knock. But it wasn't from the front door. It was from my bedroom window. I live on the second floor though. My body locked up. I stared at the window, blinds drawn, too afraid to even breathe. Then the voice came again. "Can you let me in?" The same tone, same softness, like it already knew me. I didn't move, I didn't speak. I just sat frozen in bed until the sun came up. When I finally pulled the blinds aside, nothing was there. No footprints on the roof, no scratches, no sign that anyone or anything had been outside. But taped to the outside of the glass was another note. "You're already letting me in." I grew up in a small farming town, the kind of place where everyone knows each other and the night sky is pitch black except for the stars. My parents' house sat on the edge of a long stretch of cornfields, miles of it. As a kid, it used to fascinate me. I'd run through the stalks, play hide and seek with my brother, even lay down in the dirt just to watch the corn sway above me. But as I got older, it stopped feeling magical. Especially at night. There's something about rows and rows of tall, rustling plants that starts to feel less like a field and more like a trap, like anything or anyone could be hiding just out of sight. I came back last summer to house sit while my parents were on a cruise. I hadn't been home in years, and I wasn't thrilled to be alone out there. But they insisted I'd have peace and quiet, and I figured a week away from the city wouldn't hurt. The first night was uneventful. I made dinner, watched some TV, and tried to ignore how dark it got once the sun disappeared. Total blackness beyond the porch lights, not even a glow on the horizon. Around 2 a.m, I was brushing my teeth when I heard something through the open bathroom window. Whispers. Faint. Too soft to make out, but unmistakably voices. At first, I thought it was the wind in the corn, which can sound eerily human when it moves, but the cadence was off. It sounded like someone was murmuring something right outside, more than one person maybe, like a conversation where both sides were whispering too fast to understand. I turned off the light and leaned close to the screen. The whispers stopped. I stared out into the field for a long time but saw nothing. I went to bed and tried to shake it off. Country silence just plays tricks on you, I told myself. The next night, it came again. Same time. Same low, frantic murmurs. This time, I grabbed a flashlight and stepped onto the back porch. The whispers stopped the moment the door creaked open. I scanned the edge of the field. The corn swayed gently, but there was no wind. Then something stepped out. I didn't see its face, just a shape. Human-sized, wrong posture, shoulders too high, head tilted in a strange angle. It stood between two rows, perfectly still, and I thought maybe it was a scarecrow I'd forgotten about, until it moved again. One step back, then another, and then it slipped into the corn without a sound. I backed into the house and locked the door and stayed up until sunrise, every light in the house on. The next day, I went to the edge of the field. I wasn't brave enough to go in, but I scanned for footprints. The soil was dry and cracked. There should have been prints. There weren't any. That night, I didn't open the door, but I heard the whispers again, closer now. This time, they were right up against the windows, like someone was leaning on the glass, speaking into the cracks in the frame. I could make out words. "He sees us. Don't let him in. Still watching." I stayed curled up in the hallway with a knife and Max, our old retriever, lying beside me, whining. At 3:17 a.m, everything stopped. Dead silence. No wind, no bugs, no whispers. Just a house creaking in the dark. In the morning, I found corn husks on the porch, and footprints, my own, leading from the front door to the edge of the field and back. The problem is, I never opened the door. I left the same day, told my parents I wasn't feeling well, which was true. I still don't feel well. I haven't been back since, but sometimes, in the middle of the night when everything's quiet, I swear I hear something outside my apartment window. A dry rustling, and faint whispers in voices I don't recognize, saying things I can't quite understand. But last night, one voice was clear. It said, "Come back, we remember you." I've always hated being home alone at night, especially in apartments where the silence feels heavier. Every creak seems louder, every shadow seems darker. After my roommate left for a weekend trip, I figured I'd finally get some peace. No noise, no dishes in the sink, just me and my thoughts. The first night was fine. The second night, I noticed something odd. I had just finished brushing my teeth when I saw the shower curtain was pulled shut. Now, I never leave it that way. I always leave it open. I've had a weird thing about it since I was a kid. Blame too many horror movies, but I don't like not seeing what's behind it. I stared at it for a long moment. Then, trying to brush off the unease, I grabbed the curtain and yanked it open. Empty, of course. Still, I left it open and went to bed. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of water dripping. Not just a few drops, a steady drip, like someone had just finished the shower. I lay there for a while, heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was just the plumbing. Old buildings make noise, right? Eventually, I got up. The bathroom light was on. That was the second thing. I hadn't left it on. The third thing, the shower curtain was closed again. This time, I didn't go near it. I just backed out, turned the hallway light on, and stayed in the living room with the TV on until sunrise. The next day, I bought one of those cheap indoor security cameras, the kind that sends alerts to your phone when it detects motion. I pointed it at the bathroom and left for work. Nothing came up all day, but that night, I woke again to the sound of dripping. Drip, 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 and then something else. Breathing. Slow, wet sounding, coming from the bathroom. I reached for my phone, opened the security app. It had one video clip, motion detected at 2:47 a.m. The video was only 10 seconds long. I watched it 3 times, barely breathing. At first, the bathroom looked normal. Then, slowly, the shower curtain began to close, on its own. not like a breeze caught it. It slid across the rod with purpose, like someone was behind it, pulling it shut from the inside. I didn't sleep at all after that. I left every light in the apartment on and sat in the corner of the living room with a kitchen knife. The curtains stayed closed until morning. I almost called my roommate, but what would I say? Hey, I think there's something hiding behind the shower curtain, but only when I'm home alone. I decided to stay one more night. I left the camera on, placed a heavy chair in front of the bathroom door, and duct taped the curtain open. I even snapped a photo on my phone just to be sure. Felt like overkill, but it helped me sleep. Until 3:12 a.m. I woke up freezing. My bedroom door was wide open, and I could hear it again. Drip, drip, drip. Followed by slow, dragging footsteps down the hallway. Something paused outside my door. I held my breath. The footsteps moved on, toward the living room. Then nothing. No sound, no movement, just silence. Eventually I got up, phone in hand, light on. The chair I'd wedged against the bathroom door was in the hallway. The curtain? Closed. The duct tape had been peeled off. Not ripped, just peeled. I checked the security footage. There was a 10-second clip again. Same time, 2:47 a.m. This time, the camera glitched as soon as the curtain started to move. Just static. Then the sound of something wet dragging across the tile. Then the video ended. The final frame showed the curtain closed, and just beneath the hem, you could see a foot. Bare, pale, facing outwards. I left immediately. I took nothing, slept in my car. My roommate moved back the next day, and I told him everything. He laughed. Then he stopped when I showed him the video. He didn't laugh after that. We replaced the shower curtain with a glass door the following week, but sometimes, when I'm alone and the house is quiet, I'm sure I can hear that water dripping. And the last time I walked past the bathroom at night, I thought I saw someone's shadow through the glass. Not moving, just waiting. My parents moved into their house when I was a teenager. It was an old colonial-style place, creaky floors, drafty windows, and a basement that always smelled like damp stone and dust. The kind of place where you don't want to look into the corners too closely. The basement especially creeped me out. It wasn't finished, just concrete floors, old wooden beams, and one bare light bulb hanging from the ceiling. The switch was upstairs right by the basement door, and the light was on a timer, 10 minutes, then it would click off. I used to joke that the basement felt like it didn't want you down there. The weird thing started after I moved back home for a few months after college. One night, I came home late and noticed the basement light was on. That wasn't too unusual. My dad sometimes forgot to turn it off when he did laundry. But when I asked him the next morning, he said he hadn't been down there in a few days. Over the next week, it happened 3 more times. Every night around 11:30 p.m, the basement light would be on. I started turning it off myself, but one night I stood at the top of the stairs and stared into the dim glow below, and something made my skin crawl. It felt like the light wasn't left on, but it was being turned on while no one was home. I checked the timer switch. It was old, but it wasn't faulty. The kind you have to manually twist to activate. It always ticked when it was on. That's when I decided to test it. I stayed up late the next night, sitting silently in the dark living room watching the basement door. At exactly 11:31 p.m, I heard it. Click! That unmistakable twist of the timer switch. And the light came on. And I froze. No footsteps, no doors opening, just the click and the sudden flood of yellow light under the door. I didn't move, I just stared. 10 minutes later, click, and it went dark again. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I bought a small motion-activated camera and mounted it in the hallway across from the basement door. I synced it to my phone and waited. Again, that night, 11:31 p.m., the light clicked on. I watched the feed, but there was nothing. The door never opened, the hallway was empty, and the switch wasn't touched. But the light turned on anyway. At this point, I was kind of obsessed. So the next night, I stood at the top of the basement stairs with my phone in hand recording. The light clicked on while I was standing there. I heard it, but I didn't see the switch move. And for a brief second, I swore I could see a shadow move across the bottom of the stairs, like someone stepped just out of sight. I called out, "Hello?" But I got no answer. I forced myself to go down the stairs. Every step felt like I was descending into something that didn't want me there. The light bulb above buzzed faintly. Dust floated in the air, and everything looked the same, except for one thing. There were wet footprints on the concrete. Barefoot, small, leading from the far wall to the base of the stairs. But the wall they came from, it was solid stone. Nothing was back there but dirt. I turned off the light and bolted back up the stairs. I showed my parents. My dad checked the wiring, but everything was normal. So that night, the light clicked on again, and this time when I looked through the basement door window, I saw something standing at the bottom of the stairs. Not clearly, it was just a shape. Pale, unmoving, staring straight up at me. Shut the door and locked it, pushed a chair against it for good measure. I moved out the next day. But here's the part that still keeps me up at night. I visited about a month later, just to say hi to my folks. My dad laughed and told me that the basement light hadn't turned on once since I left. Not a single time. That night, back at my apartment, I was brushing my teeth and out of habit, I flipped the switch to the hall closet where my laundry was. The bulb flickered. Buzzed on. It was the same bulb. The same click. The same light. I stood there, heart in my throat. And then I heard it. Click. 10 minutes. The exact timer. I hadn't bought a timed switch though. I hadn't installed anything. And when I stepped into the hallway, I saw it. A single, wet footprint on the wooden floor. A few years ago, I drove a rideshare at night to make extra money. Mostly weekend shifts, college kids bar hopping, nothing too dramatic. Just long hours and the occasional weird conversation. But there's one night I've never been able to explain. One ride that still makes me feel sick when I think about it. It was a Saturday, around 2 a.m. I had just dropped off a couple on the edge of town and was heading back toward downtown when I got another ping. Pickup was in a neighborhood I didn't know very well. It was quiet, mostly older houses, lots of overgrown hedges and tall trees. The kind of place where streetlights are few and far between. The passenger's name was Greg. He was waiting at the curb when I pulled up. Mid-30s, tall, neat clothes. Smiled, said hello, even complimented the car. Polite, if a little stiff. He didn't have any luggage, just a single keyring in his hand. Said he was heading to a motel about 20 minutes out of town. Made some small talk, and he didn't say much, just nodded along and gave short answers. Stared out the window most of the time. About 5 minutes into the drive, I started to smell something. At first, I thought it was just old fast food. Happens sometimes. People spill things in the back seat or someone's had one too many drinks. But this was different. The smell was thick, sweet, metallic, like copper. I checked the rearview mirror. Greg was still staring out of the window, completely still. I rolled the windows down, trying to air it out, and asked, "Hey, do you smell something weird?" He didn't respond. Just turned and looked at me in the mirror, slow and calm. And then he said, It's almost over. I didn't know what to say. The rest of the ride was dead silent. When we pulled into the motel parking lot, he handed me a 50, thanked me softly and stepped out. Then he paused, turned back towards me and said, "You should check your trunk." Before I could react, he walked off into the night and disappeared behind the building. Sat there for a while trying to process what he said. Finally, I got out, went around the back of the car and opened the trunk. It was empty, or at least I thought it was empty, until I lifted the spare tyre panel. There was a towel bundled up beneath the tyre, soaked through, and under that was a knife, just sitting there. A large kitchen knife, stained, still wet. There was no blood anywhere else in the trunk, just the towel and the blade. I didn't touch it, I didn't even breathe. I slammed it shut, locked the car and drove straight to a gas station on the other side of town. I scrubbed my hands 3 times even though I hadn't touched anything. I reported it to the police, anonymously. I said I found something suspicious in my trunk and didn't want to be involved. No one ever contacted me back. The rideshare app said the ride request came from a prepaid burner phone, and no one named Greg ever checked into the motel that night. Sometimes I wonder if the guy even existed, if he planted the knife, if he'd done something terrible and used me to move the evidence. But here's the part that haunts me. A week later, I was cleaning the car again, trying to forget the whole thing, when I found something wedged between the backseat cushions. The photo, a printed snapshot, worn and creased. It showed a woman, smiling, standing in front of a red brick house. And written on the back, in neat block letters, were the words, "She's in the trunk now."